What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. This is a very special episode because this is my final night in college. Your boy graduates tomorrow, May 3rd, 9 a.m. in the morning. And with this being my final night of college, I felt it was only right for me to come on here and talk some college ball with you boys because it's been a while. It's been over 4 months since we last talked college football for real. And over the last couple of days, I've now started to understand why Colorado gets called a reality TV show, because there's always something going on with this damn team. Like, I swear, not a day goes by where you don't hear something about Colorado. And recently, The Athletic dropped a piece where they interviewed a bunch of former players who were kicked to the curb by Deion when he first got the Boulder to make space for his Louis luggage. And one of the players in this piece really went in on Coach Prime. He said how he didn't take time to get to know him. He was destroying guys' confidence. And when this article started to make its rounds over social media and it got back to Coach Prime, he clapped back at some of the statements made in this piece by some of the players, which led to a lot of backlash from the masses. And then his son Shadur hops in and calls one of the players mid, says how he didn't even know who the dude was. And I want to give my 2 cents on the latest Colorado drama and how they've now made themselves the evil empire of college football. And when are we going to start being honest about how college football is now the NFL on Saturdays? Because it seems like nobody wants to come to terms with it. It seems like people are still trying to make small excuses to say college football is still college football, even though the transfer portal now allows players to transfer unlimited times, which is the equivalent to free agency. You got schools handing out $2-3 million NIL packages. It's just, I don't get how we can act like this is college football anymore, people. This is obviously the NFL 2.0. Instead of watching it on Sundays, we get blessed enough to watch it on Saturdays and sometimes Fridays, with a bunch of great stadiums and fan bases being shown every single weekend. And a few nights ago, I watched Florida State spring game, by the way, and they need to hit that transfer portal and get them another quarterback, because there's no way they're going to run it back winning the ACC again this year with the dude they got starting right now. And I want to talk to you guys about the orange and green Kool-Aid that I'm chugging this year when it comes to the Miami Hurricanes. You know, I know every single year everybody always says, man, the Miami Hurricanes always swear that they're going to win the ACC and they always disappoint. Well, this year, I feel it's truly going to be different. And I'm going to tell you guys why. But before we dive into it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find this episode and all our other ones in audio format on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Before we begin, here's a quick word from our partner, Mint Mobile. Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JTsports and description and pin comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint is easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JTsports in description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today. A civil war has broken out in college football, people. It's Colorado versus everybody. Which side of the war do you stand on? Are you rooting for Colorado to succeed under Coach Prime? Or are you rooting for the collapse of Deion's evil empire? Now, recently, The Athletic dropped the article where they interviewed several former Colorado players who were pushed out to the transfer portal by Deion Sanders when he first got the Boulder and he was doing his roster overhaul. And one of the several players in this article was named Xavier Smith. And he put Deion on blast in this piece, saying how he treated him during his short time in Colorado and how he handled his dismissal from the team wasn't really that great of an experience. He said that Deion didn't take time to get to know him. He was destroying guys' confidence. And he could have gone about this situation a little bit less harsher than how he did. Now, these statements from this article started to make waves on social media, and Shedeur Sanders happened to come across him. So he started to get himself involved in this and clap back at this player's statement, tweeting out that he didn't even know who he was and how he had to be mid at best. And then all of a sudden, everybody just went complete roughshod on Shedeur Sanders. They just came at this dude's throat. And that caused Deion Sanders to end up responding to a troll saying that Shedeur was going to be a top 5 pick in next year's NFL draft. And then he clapped back at a couple of other former players' criticisms. And there was one guy who ended up transferring to a school called Austin Peay, who barely played last year. And one of the Colorado fan pages screenshotted his lackluster stats and posted it. And Deion Sanders ended up retweeting it, posting LOL with a bunch of laughing emojis. And this whole entire situation has turned Colorado football into the evil empire of college football. They are now the villains of this sport. Everybody is criticizing Coach Prime for how he's running his program, calling it more of a reality show than it is a football team. And you guys know that I love Coach Prime. I'm rooting for him to succeed at Colorado, and I believe that he's going to win big. But there are a lot of fair criticisms about Coach Prime that don't have anything to do with the color of the brother's skin. You feel me? And when I talk about Deion Sanders, I feel like I keep it 100. I feel like I'm pretty unbiased. I call it how I see it. And there is a lot of truth to the people who are saying that Deion Sanders isn't going about handling this criticism from his former players well. Because when you're a head coach, you are expected to be mature. You are expected to be a leader of men. You're not supposed to be getting on the same level as these players and going back and forth with them on Twitter. You allow your players on your team to do that for you. If Shedeur Sanders wants to come out and call a guy mid and say how he didn't know him at all, I don't have a problem with it. I do have a problem with my head coach doing it, who's the face of my program, who's supposed to be an elder. He's supposed to be the OGs. He's supposed to be wise. He's supposed to be helping these young men become better men. And I don't get how you clapping back at these players on Twitter is setting that example. And before you say, JT, do you know how many articles are published every day painting a false narrative of Colorado under Deion Sanders? Yes, I do. But when you're Deion Sanders and you're just a head coach, period, there's just something about being a head coach where you got to understand that these criticisms, these false narratives are what comes with the job. You have to be able to respond to them, though, in a way better way that doesn't make you seem immature. And with how Deion is interacting with these players, I kind of look at him and I say, man, I feel like you're above this. This is beneath you to be clapping back, laughing at a guy who didn't play for you that much and didn't get a lot of opportunities at Austin Peay last year. Why does it matter that much to you? Why are you focused on what a player that doesn't play for you anymore has to say? Focus on the guys in your locker room. Focus on the players that are still wearing that Colorado Buffs uniform, that are putting their blood, sweat, and tears into the program. Those are the guys who deserve all your attention. Those are the only guys who you should be investing your time in. Not worried about people who are no longer part of your operation. Mike Tomlin always says, we want volunteers, not hostages. If somebody wants to say that Colorado isn't for them, then that's a personal decision. You feel me? And if they want to diss the program, you can respond back, but not in this way. You got to do it better. When you're a head coach, you're expected to carry yourself and handle yourself in a different way. And it doesn't matter about the color of your skin when it comes to this. It really does. I get that there's a lot of hate and criticism about Deion Sanders. Trust me, y'all see my ex. I'm going back and forth with Colorado haters all day long. Y'all know if I got time, I'll make time to put a hater in check when it comes to Coach Prime and the Buffs. But I also make sure to keep it fair and call this thing 100. And I really don't like how Deion Sanders has handled this situation. I actually have lost a little bit of respect for him. Because you are way too old to be clapping back at these jits that are 40 years younger than you, man. And when it comes to the perspective of the Xavier Smith player, I understand where he's coming from in a sense. Everybody was trying to say this kid was soft. He had no dog in him. This dude was a defensive back. And one of the most recognizable athletes ever, one of the best football players, one of the best to ever play his same position, told him that he wasn't good enough to play for him. He wasn't paying him enough attention. That definitely hits different. If you were a quarterback and you ended up playing for Tom Brady's college and he's the head coach and you're doing everything you can to get recognized by him to make a good impression for him, and then all of a sudden he just ignores you. It seems like whatever you do isn't good enough. And then eventually he says, you're not good enough to play for me. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of harsh feelings about that. When you're a defensive back and one of the greatest to ever play the position tells you, hey, we don't have a spot for you, that shit hurts. You can call it soft. You can call it whatever you want. But I'm pretty sure anybody who's ever looked up to an athlete and their athlete ends up not being who they expected them to be, you know, it always ends up being a giant letdown. That's why they say never meet your heroes. They'll always let you down. And for Xavier Smith, he met his hero potentially in Deion Sanders. He thought he was going to have the opportunity to learn from an all-time great. And it turned into a situation that, you know, it didn't have a good impact on his mental health. So I can definitely understand where he's coming from when he says that he was destroying guys' confidence. Deion does kind of come at these players a little bit harsh. And for all of you guys who want an inside look of how Deion Sanders is as a coach and you're tired of reading all these articles about it, go watch season 2 of Coach Prime on Amazon. I promise you, nothing in that documentary is edited. It is raw. It is uncut. There are certain scenes in that documentary that I really felt they should have took out. Because after they lost to UCLA, Deion Sanders made his whole entire starting offensive line stand up and explain to the team why they weren't playing good, and even made a true freshman offensive tackle explain to the team why he wasn't starting. You know, I don't really like that. I don't really agree with that method of calling guys out, but that's that old school style of coaching. And when you have this old school style of coaching, certain players are going to be able to handle it, but a lot of these new age generational players that are coming from my generation that were born in like 2002 and they're on, you know, these guys can't take the kind of coaching that Deion Sanders dishes out. And for a lot of players, it becomes a little bit too much. And that's why you can get players like Xavier Smith saying that this dude was a little bit too harsh. You know, Deion Sanders is a Hall of Famer. He's a great. He's won at every single level. He knows what it takes to win. He wants his players to share that same drive and passion to be great that he had as a player that helped catapult him to being a gold jacket in Canton, Ohio. But when it comes to being a head coach, you got to carry yourself with more class. And Deion Sanders, just with how he interacts with critics and haters on Twitter, I just look at it, I'm like, bro, like, this is something that a head coach should not be doing. And stop using the whole argument that he has a right to clap back. Nobody's saying that. But when you're in high positions of authority, you're held to a higher standard, man. What's so difficult to understand about that? If I'm the CEO of Apple, I shouldn't be going back and forth with my workers who are working underneath me on social media. That's something that I should handle probably off social media. Because with me being the face of a company, it's a bad look for me to be in a back and forth with somebody that's 40 years younger than me. You know what? How can you really say that you're trying to build and develop better men when you're carrying yourself like a kid in a sense? And I love Coach Prime, but he does have a lot of immature qualities as a coach that it definitely does show. It shows a lot. And when it comes to leading a winning college football team, not only do you have to have the respect of your players, you got to have them bought in. Deion Sanders, with him going back and forth with these players on social media, it's just taken away from time that he should be investing back into his team. You shouldn't be worried about players that transferred from your university. You shouldn't be worried about players that you got rid of. Who cares what they have to say about you? When you're a head coach, you're going to get criticized, rather if it be fair or not. Articles are going to come out about you that are going to be paying you out to be something that you're not. This has happened to Kirby Smart with all the Georgia players that get arrested. You remember after the Jalen Carter situation, there were articles coming out by a newspaper in Atlanta trying to make it seem like Kirby Smart was running a certain kind of program where he didn't hold the players accountable. He didn't instill discipline. Did he go on X and, lash out on the people who wrote the article? No. He eventually addressed it in a way that was professional. And I love Deion Sanders. I'm not trying to criticize him as a person, but I'm criticizing him as a coach. Because you're 40 years older than me, and you're doing something on social media that I would do, which is not good out of a head coach. You're a leader. You're a captain of 85 men on that roster who are looking up to you. And look at the example that you're setting. Look at your son. Your son clapping back. I don't really care about it. I don't really think it's going to affect his draft stock at all. I think what is going to hurt his draft stock is the fact of he's Deion Sanders' son, which, of course, some of you guys are going to say is going to benefit him, but it's going to hurt him too. Because, yes, he is Deion Sanders' son, but that also means that there are a lot of teams that aren't even going to think about drafting this dude because of who his pops is, and they're not going to want anything to do with it. And there are going to be some teams that are going to love Shedeur Sanders, and they're not going to care about his dad too much because they know that Shedeur Sanders, learning from his pops, is going to have the same traits that his dad did to become a great. For Shedeur, him calling the guy mid and saying he didn't know him, like, bro, who cares, man? This is just how this generation is. Hell, when I played high school and middle school football, people on my team had no problem letting somebody else know where they were trash. There were teammates who called me trash on several occasions. What did that make me do? Did I get in my feelings about it? Did I say that my teammates would destroy my confidence? No, you know what I did? I used that as motivation to practice harder, to work harder. So it's just when it comes to this whole Colorado, Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders drama with their former players or teammates, they got to start handling this a lot better. They can't let the criticism get to them. They can't let the hate get to them. And right now, they can't play it off like the hate isn't getting to them. But I saw Deion Sanders Jr., just going scorched earth on the Nebraska fan who wrote this article. And it's real crazy that a Nebraska fan wrote this article. It's real crazy. And you want to know why these former players feel comfortable, expressing how their experience went the way they do? Because they know that the media is going to paint a narrative about Deion Sanders. So if they take and say something, the media is going to, make it a lot bigger of an issue than what it actually is. I'm pretty sure that Xavier Smith didn't say this quote to make it seem like he was soft. I think what he was trying to say is, bro, like, when the greatest of all time at your position tells you that you're not good enough to play for his squad and he's not giving you attention and everything that you're trying to do to impress him isn't enough, like, of course you're going to be hurt about that shit, man. Like, if Tom Brady was to watch my podcast, or Stephen A. Smith or somebody that I look up to was to watch this podcast and say, you know what, JT, you're terrible, you're trash, that's not going to make me stop doing this. It's going to motivate me to go harder and be better than them, but it is going to hurt a little bit because I look up to you. And that's why they say never meet your heroes, because they always disappoint you in the end. But, it's Colorado versus everybody. Because of this, people either are rooting for Colorado to succeed or they are rooting for Colorado to be absolutely terrible so they can laugh at this situation and these players can come back at Coach Prime and be like, damn, so I wasn't good enough, but y'all boys wasn't better without me. So what does that say about you? I think for Coach Prime, the best thing he can do to silence the haters is to just show up on the field and win these damn games. You're playing in the Big 12. There's no reason Colorado shouldn't win this conference with the 2 transfer portal classes that they have brought in the last 2 years. Last year's transfer portal class was just, let's get everybody in and let's just try to put a team together. This year is more thought out, their approach. If you look at the people that they've brought in from the portal, they've brought in like dozens of offensive and defensive linemen, and they're just trying guys out, and the guys who aren't good, they're cutting them and they're bringing in another batch. And if a few of those players aren't good, they're going to cut those, keep the dudes that are serviceable or the guys who can end up being high quality starters, and continue to rotate guys until they have a team that's good enough to their liking with the talent that they want. And when you're trying to rebuild a team that has been irrelevant for damn near 2 decades, I think that this is the best approach to have towards it. When you got players like Xavier Smith calling you out, like, yeah, it could make your program be seen in a bad light, but Deion Sanders isn't doing anything different that no other coach in college football is doing. Hell, I go to FAU. Tom Herman is telling these FAU players the same thing that Deion Sanders had to tell Xavier Smith and all the other guys that he told that they didn't have a spot for him at Colorado. That's just what college football has become now with the NIL and the transfer portal. It's not like the NFL. College football is the NFL on Saturdays. Let's just be honest about it. When are people going to come to the realization that the college football that we grown up watching, from Auburn to FSU and the BCS National Championship to the college football playoff era now, has changed so much to the point that it's unrecognizable. This is the NFL on Saturdays, man. These players can transfer as many times as they want, meaning that the transfer portal essentially is the equivalent to NFL free agency. There are now players who are transferring from schools like USC to the in-school opposition in UCLA and transferring right back to the ops if it doesn't work out. Are you kidding me? Caden Proctor went from Alabama to Iowa back to Alabama. That's sick. And you mean to tell me that this is still college football? These NIL deals are the equivalent to NFL contracts. You got guys signing $4 million NIL deals as collegiate athletes. And we are still trying to act like we're still watching college football on Saturdays, because I don't think we are. Like, we're not watching the NFL 2.0. We had Quinshon Judkins last year at Ole Miss threatened to sit out of a game if Ole Miss didn't give him more NIL money. This is the new age of college football, people. It's driven by money and greed and the fact that these players have the freedom to do what's in their best interest for their careers. Doesn't that sound a whole lot like the NFL? Hell, I just saw an article a few minutes ago that says that the new NIL deals that are going to be coming along the way the next couple of months are going to be modified to include players having to play in bowl games. Okay. And if this isn't enough to show you that college football is no longer college football, we're watching the NFL on Saturdays and Friday nights sometimes. The playoffs expanding from 4 teams to 12 to eventually 14. It's just like the NFL's playoff system. You want to know how? You got auto bids. You in the SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12, you're automatically put in the college football playoffs. Even if you have a 8-4 Big 10 or a 7-5 SEC champion, you still automatically qualify as long as you win your conference. And then you're going to have your auto bids or your at-large bids, which pretty much are going to be like wild card spots. This is the NFL reincarnated, people. This ain't college football anymore. This ain't You know, what you used to see in the 80s and 90s when rivalries used to mean something. And when a player committed to a team on National Signing Day, that's who he committed to give his life and dedication to for the next 3-4 years. Now you're seeing an era in college football when it's all about the money and it's all about doing what's in the best interest to put you in the best situation to land you in the National Football League so you can do what? Make more money. You see, the NFL is as big as what it is because it's one of the best ran corporations in all of the world. And when you look at college football, they're not on the level of the NFL when it comes to organization and having structure, but they're figuring it out. And you know how they're probably going to find a solution to solving these transfer portal issues and whatnot? The Big Ten, the SEC, are pretty much going to end up merging and becoming a super conference. And then we're going to have the NFC, AFC. Hell, that's what they already are right now. Who won the national championship this past year? Michigan. Who won it the season before that? The SEC and the Big Ten have a monopoly over college football. And it's the equivalent to the NFC, AFC conferences in the National Football League. So once again, I'm going to ask you this one last time. Are you sure what I'm watching on Saturdays is still college football? Yeah, like we still got the stadiums. The stadiums still are super memorable. You know, they're great landmarks. We still got pageantry. We still got the different traditions that you won't find at the same university if you go to another university down the road. There are still things in college football that still give it that college football feel. But the more college football continues to change, the closer it continues to becoming a complete ripoff of what the NFL is. It still can't be called the NFL ripoff yet because there still is a few things about it that still makes it different from the NFL. But really, it mainly has to deal with the atmosphere. What happens if these college football stadiums end up getting rebuilt and they turn into domes? Then the weather isn't a factor. Then location doesn't matter. And then you really do have the second coming of the National Football League. But I just get a little bit shocked how people are still trying to make it seem like college football is still its own thing. Like, no, this thing is way closer to the NFL than what you think. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram at JTSports_ and on X at JTSports__. If you have a question that you would like answered on a future episode, you can send them in the DMs on X and Instagram. Give us a 5-star review if you are enjoying this episode. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. We'll greatly appreciate it if you give us a 5-star review and share this episode with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. Helps us out a lot. Helps keep the channel growing. Helps the podcast keep growing. And you support me. It's free to do. Only takes 5 to 10 seconds to complete. Florida State has a quarterback problem. If FSU wants to repeat as ACC champions this season, they need to hit that portal up and go find them another quarterback because they ain't going to go too far with DJ Uiagalelei. Now, a couple of nights ago, I watched Florida State spring game, and DJ Uiagalelei in that game looked like the same player that he's been when he was at Oregon State last year and his previous couple of years at Clemson. He makes really bad decisions with the football. He misses easy completions. But he'll also will make some really good throws into tight windows, and he'll make some nice runs. And that's what makes DJ Uiagalelei a quarterback that is going to hold Florida State back from being able to repeat as ACC champions. And they possibly could end up missing out on making it into the first year of the new expanded college football playoffs because I'm going to have a hard time seeing Florida State beat Miami or Clemson in a championship game when you have a guy in DJ Uiagalelei that last year at Oregon State against top 25 teams had 4 touchdowns to 4 interceptions and completed only 53% of his passes. This dude just isn't a good quarterback. He's one of the worst quarterbacks that I've ever watched. And it's really weird to say, but if you've been following DJ Uiagalelei throughout his collegiate career, you will understand what I mean by that. Because the dude is bad, but he's the best bad quarterback that I've ever seen because he will still make plays that can keep you in the game. It's just that you're really going to need your defense to step up this year and really carry the load for this team. His spring game performance was really tough to watch. Now, he did get better as the game progressed on. His best receiver got injured. There were a few drops there. But he hasn't been that good throughout the whole entire spring camp. Not just the spring game itself, but throughout the entirety of spring camp. I've had a few buddies of mine who actually go to Florida State, who have gone to a few of the practices, who went to the spring game, and they were telling me, man, JT, this dude ain't it. And when they first got DJ Uiagalelei, they looked at the stats. They're like, bro, like, what you mean this dude doesn't make good decisions with the football? He only threw 7 interceptions last season. If you watch DJ Uiagalelei play every single game for Oregon State last year against good teams, you would know that the stats are really deceiving. They really are. And playing for Florida State, where Clemson may end up having the luxury of going up against them, I'm pretty sure they're going to be licking their chops because they're going to have the opportunity to show everybody why they moved on from DJ Uiagalelei. Clemson's really good this season. Florida State could be really good too if they find them another quarterback, because the one you got right now, I don't know how much you paid DJ Uiagalelei in NIL money, but I hope you didn't give him too much, because if you did, you're getting scammed and finessed, and you might need to go get a refund. Now, Mike Norvell keeps saying all the right things about DJ Uiagalelei. He's saying how he's developing, he's getting better every single practice. Like, that's just bullshit to me. That's coach talk. Did y'all see that spring game? Did DJ Uiagalelei look like a more improved quarterback than what we've seen out of him the last couple of years? I see the same quarterback doing the same thing that got him replaced at Clemson. Saw the same quarterback that costed Oregon State a potential win against Washington. Like, DJ Uiagalelei, the only way you can win with this dude is if you have a great defense, you run him a lot, you can get the vertical passing game going, you got receivers that can win vertically. That's the best way you can maximize DJ Uiagalelei, because he's nothing close to what Jordan Travis is. Jordan Travis and DJ Uiagalelei are in two different stratospheres. When Jordan Travis got injured, his impact of not being in the starting lineup was so great that the college football committee snubbed FSU out of the playoffs because of it. So you're not just going to be able just to win with DJ Uiagalelei because you just have a good team and a good coaching staff with the schedule that you have this year. It's going to be an uphill battle trying to beat Miami, Clemson, and Notre Dame with DJU at quarterback. And I'm not trying to harp on the dude as a person, you feel me? This is just me talking about the player. But he's not really a college kid anymore. Like, when you're making millions of dollars in NIL money, I expect better out of you, even if it's the spring game. Did you see Cam Warren looking like that in the spring game? You can say, oh, JT, like, our defense is just that good. Is it really? Or did we just watch the same quarterback that we've seen at Oregon State and Clemson for all these years in Florida State spring game, and we just got further reassurance that DJ Uiagalelei isn't making too many big improvements? And I'm not saying the dude is terrible. Like, he's the best bad quarterback that I've ever watched. It's so weird. Like, he'll be terrible, but he'll still make a couple of good plays to keep you in the game here and there. The question is, can he make enough big plays late in the game to win you those big games against Miami, Clemson, and Notre Dame? That's going to be the big kicker. You see, when DJ Uiagalelei reminds me a lot of this quarterback Miami used to have. His name was Malik Rozier. He played a lot like DJ Uiagalelei. He was inaccurate. He made really inconsistent decisions with the football, but he was a good athlete, and he did have a knack for making big plays in the right moments to keep Miami alive to win certain games. But for Florida State this year, if you are trying to get back to the ACC championship and make it into the playoffs for the first time under Coach Norvell, you're going to need way more out of quarterback. And you definitely need to start hitting that portal, looking for some good backup options, just in case this dude, DJ Uiagalelei, really does hit the fan. Because he ain't going to play bad enough for you to bench him, But he definitely is going to play bad enough where, in certain games, you're going to be like, damn, like this dude really costed us. It seems like every single year, the Miami Hurricanes fan base is always talking about how this is the best team we've had since 2002, or how they're going to win the ACC just for the regular season to roll around and be severely disappointed. But in 2024, though, something feels really different about Miami football. And I don't know about you, but I've been chugging down a lot of this green and orange Kool-Aid, and it's tasting like ACC championship this year, in my opinion. Miami, they got everything that they need to run the table in the ACC this year and win this conference outright. You finally got a true superstar at quarterback, and Cam Ward. Miami has never had a quarterback in the history of this program as talented as what Cam Ward is. And yes, I'm talking about all the greats from the 80s and 90s. Cameron Ward is the most talented, the most gifted quarterback that this program has ever had. Did you not see him in the spring game? Bro, when I was watching Cam Ward and watching him play and throwing these dimes to Xavier Restrepo, I damn near cried because it was beautiful out there to see a true superstar at quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke had his moments. You had De'Aaron King when he first transferred in from Houston. There was a lot of hype around him, but it didn't really materialize. Brad Kyle was pretty good. Steven Morris was pretty good, but Cam Ward easily takes the cake in the pie. He has a great arm. He's a good athlete. He makes really good decisions with the football. He's accurate. The Hurricanes are going to do a lot of damage this year with Cam Ward at quarterback. And then you want to know what should make people even more of a believer that the Miami Hurricanes are finally going to return to being relevant in college football this year? They just got running back Damian Martinez out of the portal. He was the best running back available. This is somebody that was averaging 6.1 yards per carry last season at Oregon State. Do you not know how good of a back you have to be to put up that kind of average per carry? 6 yards, that means for every 2 times you tote the rock, you're averaging a first down. Behind the offensive line that Miami's going to have this year with Cam Ward in the backfield, how are you going to game plan for stopping this offense if you're opposing team's defense? I don't see how Clemson's going to stop this offense this year. Do you? Do you see Florida State's defense being able to stop this offense? Like, if I'm Florida State, I would even want to play Miami this year because they're going to get embarrassed. DJ Uiagalelei versus Cam Ward is going to be an absolute mismatch. And like I just said earlier, when it comes to Florida State, they're not going to go anywhere with DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. They're going to have a hard time trying to repeat as conference champs with him because he's just so inconsistent with Cam Ward. Even in his worst games at Washington State, he still was never as bad as what DJ Uiagalelei's worst games are. Cam Ward is the missing piece to the Miami Hurricanes being able to win these big-time games that has eluded this program for a while. Like, I can't remember the last time Miami has beaten a good team and that win actually meant something since when they went on that run back in 2017 when they beat Notre Dame and Virginia Tech in back-to-back weeks. That's the last time I can remember Miami getting big wins and big-time primetime games with big-time atmosphere and everybody watching, the lights being the brightest. That's the last time I remember Miami rising up for that kind of game. Ever since then, anytime Miami's in a big game, it's either a blowout or they find a way to blow it. Defensively, I really like what Miami has. Okay, they got a really good defensive line. The secondary should be really good. They got some really good safeties out of the portal as well. And Mario Cristobal. There's a lot of critics when it comes to Mario Cristobal. They say he's a great recruiter, but he's an average in-game head coach. Well, we're going to see that theory tested this season. Everywhere Mario Cristobal has been, around year 3 or 4, is where the program starts to reach their stride. This is when his program starts to take that big leap. His third season at Oregon, he won 12 games. They won the Rose Bowl. He helped Justin Herbert become a future first-round pick. I don't expect anything less this season out of Mario Cristobal with the Miami Hurricanes. If the Miami Hurricanes don't win at least 10 games this season, Mario Cristobal should be fired. Because anything less than the ACC championship appearance this year out of Miami is just flat out unacceptable. And there's nothing that any Hurricanes fans can tell me to feel otherwise, bro. Did you not see how stacked this team is? Like, this is truly the best team that Miami has had since 2002. And I know we say it every single year, but it shows. Damian Martinez, Sam Brown, like, these were two of the top players at their positions coming out of the portal. You already got a lot of returning vets that are already pretty productive. You know, Jacoby George, you know, Xavier Restrepo. Like, there's way too much talent on Miami's roster. There's so much talent in this coaching staff that it should be flat out impossible for Miami to not at least be able to get to 10 wins this season. Like, please, Miami, if there was ever a season for you to finally live up to the hype, it would be 2024. Look at their schedule. Their toughest games are against Florida, Virginia Tech on the road early, FSU, and Duke at home. Florida isn't even good. Florida should at least lose to Miami by at least 2 touchdowns in week 1. And I'm not being biased when I say this. Like, I truly believe this. When you look at Florida's spring game compared to Miami's spring game, like, they got a lot of work to do. We're far ahead compared to the rest of the teams in the ACC outside of Clemson, because Clemson definitely, they in the same category as Miami. They definitely could win the ACC this year too. But outside of Clemson and Duke, I think everybody else in the ACC is just a notch below Miami and Clemson when it comes to at least a talent standpoint this year. Now we're going to see just how good of a coach Mario Cristobal is, because Miami should be 6-0 before they have that big game on the road against Louisville. You play Florida, that's a dub. You got FAMU, Ball State, USF on the road, Virginia Tech, Cal on the road. Miami should be 6-0. And then you got FSU, Duke as your 2 toughest games following that. Miami may not go 12-0 because I know, like, upsets do happen, but 11-1, 10-2 to me, that sounds pretty fair. Considering that Mario has recruited at a really high level, he's brought in 2 outstanding recruiting classes, a top 5 class 1 year, top 10 class the year before that. Like, this dude is on the tear when it comes to being able to recruit like how you should and how you're expected to in the location that Miami's in. But now we need to start seeing that production. The problem with Miami has never been the ability to get talent. Manny Diaz was able to get some talent, although not to the same extent as Mario Cristobal, but he was working the portal. He was getting a couple of good high school recruits, but he was never able to develop them fully. And they were never ever able to play up to their potential under Manny Diaz when he was coaching. So Mario Cristobal, can he get these guys to the first round? Can he develop them? These are the questions that are going to be really important in shaping the success that Miami has this year. The majority of teams that make it to the college football playoffs, they normally have a lot of NFL players on their squad. I believe there are a couple of NFL guys that Miami has this year. You know, I like the staff. I love offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson. Miami has had a really bad run with offensive coordinators, my time being a Hurricanes fan. The only 2 OCs I can remember that were somewhat decent were Rhett Lashley and this Shannon Dawson dude. So I like him as the offensive coordinator. Cam Ward is a really good fit in his system because he's coming from an air raid system that he ran back at Washington and Incarnate Ward. So for me, I'm drinking all of that green and orange Miami Kool-Aid, and it's tasting like ACC championship and college football playoff appearance. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. This is the final episode from the college dorm, man. It just feels so bittersweet, man. It's like I really can't believe it, but I got a lot of things planned for the podcast moving forward. You know, the next time I upload an episode, everything is going to look so differently. I'm not going to tell you guys all the changes that we have on the way, but it's going to be a surprise. But just know I appreciate you guys for supporting me for all these years. If it wasn't for your support, I wouldn't have been able to get it through college, because with you guys watching the videos, I was able to have money to be able to pay my way through school, be able to survive and eat down here. So I appreciate you guys for supporting me. And I'm looking forward to what the future is for JT Sports. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.